Welcome to Creepy, the best horror storyteller on YouTube.
Part 1, Whispers on the Asphalt.
The air on NH316 hung heavy with the humidity of the approaching monsoon. It clung to our skin like a shroud, a fitting metaphor for the oppressive dread that coiled in our guts. We were 4 friends, bound for Darjeeling, our laughter choked by the whispers of infamy that clung to the asphalt ribbon ahead. Dead Man's Curve. The very name sent shivers skittering down spines, conjuring tales of headless apparitions and blood-curdling screams swallowed by the echoing maw of the tunnel. Akash gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white against the worn leather. Beside me, my ever-rational sister, Priya, forced a smile, her eyes flicking nervously towards the looming tunnel mouth. In the back, our daredevil duo, Rohan and Riya, attempted bravado, their voices a touch too high, their jokes falling flat on the thick air. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised hues of purple and orange. The approaching dusk seemed to suck the light from the world, plunging the road ahead into an unsettling gloom. As we neared the curve, the forest pressed in closer, gnarled branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The air grew thick with the cloying scent of damp earth and decay, the silence broken only by the rhythmic hum of the engine and the unsettling chirping of unseen insects. Dead Man's Curve materialized before us, a jagged scar in the hillside. The tunnel gaped like a sightless socket, darkness oozing from its depths like black ink. The sign, weathered and moss-covered, leered with a single, rusted word, tunnel. Beneath it, faded almost to illegibility, a smaller legend read, "Enter at your own peril." Rohan, ever the jester, slammed his fist on the roof of the car. "Gentlemen, ladies," he declared, his voice tinged with mock theatricality, "we stand at the precipice of oblivion. Shall we face our doom with courage or cower like whimpering puppies?" Riya, his ever-faithful partner in mischief, snorted, "Don't be dramatic, Rohan. It's just a tunnel. Besides, the chai at the other end is calling my name." Priya, her forced smile fading, cast a worried glance at me. "Akash," she murmured, "maybe we should turn back. There's a storm brewing and—" I cut her off, a stubborn determination hardening in my voice. "No turning back, Priya. We came too far. Besides, a little rain never hurt anyone." My words echoed in the car, hollow and unconvincing. Even my own bravado rang false in my ears. But turning back now, succumbing to the whispers of fear, felt like admitting defeat. So, with a deep breath and a silent prayer, I steered the car towards the inky maw of the tunnel. The moment we crossed the threshold, the world outside ceased to exist. The headlights sliced through the Stygian gloom, revealing damp brick walls slick with condensation. Grotesque shadows danced on the uneven surface, morphing into monstrous shapes with each passing flicker of light. The air turned thick and stagnant, heavy with the stench of mildew and something far more sinister. An unsettling silence pressed down on us, broken only by the drip-drip-drip of unseen water and the low hum of the engine. It felt like we were sinking into an inky abyss, the world above fading into a distant memory. Rohan's bravado faltered, his nervous laughter now a dry rasp. Riya, usually fearless, clutched my arm, her fingers digging into my flesh like tiny claws. Priya's voice, barely a whisper, cut through the oppressive silence. "Akash, I don't like this. Let's go back." But it was too late. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, a suffocating tomb with no escape. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me whole. Just when I thought the suffocating darkness would be our only companion, a sound reached our ears. A faint scratching, at first barely audible, then growing louder, more insistent. It seemed to come from the walls themselves, a rasping symphony of unseen claws against brick. The hairs on the back of my neck pricked up like startled birds. The car swerved slightly, my hands trembling on the wheel. My friends' gasps were swallowed by the oppressive silence, their eyes wide with a growing terror that mirrored my own. The scratching intensified, accompanied now by a rhythmic tapping, like skeletal fingers beating a macabre drum solo. We strained to see past the feeble beams of our headlights, our imaginations conjuring horrors in the dancing shadows. Was it just water dripping, or something far more sinister clawing its way out of the darkness. Then we saw it, a flicker of movement in the dimness ahead. A pale shape, elongated and vaguely humanoid, darted across the headlight's path, disappearing into the inky void beyond. My foot slammed on the brake, the car screeching to a halt on the slick tunnel floor. We sat there, hearts hammering against our ribs, lungs struggling to pull in the fetid air. The silence that followed the screech of the brakes was even more terrifying than the scratching. Then, a chilling moan echoed through the cavernous tunnel, a sound that seemed to vibrate in our very bones. It was a long, drawn-out wail, filled with an anguish so profound it tore at our souls. Rowan, his bravado shattered, whimpered and buried his face in Ria's lap. Ria, tears streaming down her cheeks, clung to Priya, who in turn stared at me, her eyes pleading for escape. In that moment, I knew turning back was no longer an option. We were trapped, prey caught in the web of some unseen horror. With a trembling hand, I turned the ignition back on. The engine sputtered, reluctant to roar back to life in the oppressive atmosphere. Finally, with a cough and a shudder, it coughed back to life. I eased the car forward, the headlights once again painting grotesque shadows on the tunnel walls. The scratching and tapping resumed, their tempo increasing with each passing moment. The pale, shapeless figures flitted in and out of the beams, their forms growing clearer, more disturbing with each glimpse. Their eyes, when we could see them, were burning embers in the darkness, their mouths gaping voids filled with jagged teeth. The moan, now joined by a chorus of whispers, seemed to emanate from all around us, forming words that sent shivers down our spines. Lost souls, they hissed, forever bound. Join us, join us. Panic rose in my throat, acrid and suffocating. My hands locked on the wheel, knuckles white. The car swerved again, this time narrowly avoiding a dark shape that lumbered out of the darkness, its skeletal limbs scraping against the brick walls. The stench of decay that clung to it was almost unbearable. Priya screamed, a harsh, ragged cry that tore through the oppressive silence. The whispers redoubled, their malice palpable in the air. We were hurtling towards a precipice, not of concrete and steel, but of sanity and survival. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a cavernous chamber, the headlights revealing a scene that froze the blood in our veins. In the center of the chamber, bathed in an eerie green glow that emanated from moss-covered growths on the walls, stood a towering figure. It was skeletal, its emaciated limbs draped in tattered remnants of what might once have been a robe. Its head was a skull, eyes burning with malevolent fire, its jaw stretched in a silent scream. And before it, chained to the damp stone floor, were dozens of figures, their bodies emaciated and twisted, their faces masks of eternal agony. They looked up at us, their eyes filled with a plea for help that chilled us to the bone. As the realization of what we had stumbled upon crashed upon us, the moaning crescendoed into a deafening shriek. The towering figure raised its skeletal arms, beckoning us closer. The chains of the bound figures rattled, their pleas rising to a desperate howl. Trapped in the heart of the tunnel's darkness, with fear gnawing at our very souls, we faced a choice: continue our desperate flight into the unknown, or succumb to the chilling embrace of the horrors that lurked within the shadows of Dead Man's Curve.
Part 2, Echoes in the Abyss.
Terror tore through us like a monsoon wind. The cavern, illuminated by the moss-green glow, revealed its gruesome secrets in stark detail. The skeletal figure, draped in decaying finery, loomed like a harbinger of doom, its skull face a mask of eternal torment. The chained figures, emaciated and moaning, stretched towards us with hollow eyes, their pleas laced with an otherworldly desperation. The car sputtered to a halt, the engine groaning in protest against the oppressive atmosphere. Rowan whimpered, burying his face in Ria's lap, while Ria, pale and trembling, clung to Priya. My sister's eyes met mine, a silent plea for escape mirroring the turmoil in my own soul. But escape seemed as distant as the sun behind the tunnel's mouth. We were trapped, prey caught in the web of this nightmarish tableau. The only choice, it seemed, was to confront the horror before us, however impossible that feat appeared. With a deep breath that tasted of iron, I forced my trembling legs to move, stepping out of the car into the dank, echoing chamber. Priya followed, her hand gripping mine like a lifeline. Ria and Rohan stayed huddled in the car, their fear a palpable entity in the darkness. As we approached, the chained figures writhed, their pleas transforming into words, a chilling whisper that snaked through the cavern. "Help us," they rasped, their voices hollow like wine through dry bones. "Free us from his curse." Their gazes shifted to the skeletal figure, and a wave of fear washed over me. Its jaw, stretched in a silent scream, seemed to vibrate with unspoken words. Its eyes, burning embers in the darkness, locked onto me, and I felt a primordial terror slither into my very bones. Suddenly, a memory flickered in my mind, a childhood tale whispered by my grandmother. A tale of a greedy king, cursed by a vengeful spirit to rule over the damned in this very tunnel, forever bound to their torment. Could this skeletal figure be that king, condemned to an eternity of suffering? The thought fueled a surge of defiance within me. If this was indeed a cursed king, then perhaps breaking his hold was the key to our escape. We had to try, even if it meant facing our deepest fears. Turning to Priya, I saw the same resolve mirrored in her eyes. Together, we walked towards the chained figures, the skeletal king watching us with malevolent interest. As we neared, the air grew thick with a palpable evil, the cloying smell of decay almost overpowering. "What do you want?" the king rasped, his voice a dry whisper that scraped against my soul. "We want to help," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Break the chains. End your suffering." The king tilted his skull, his eyes burning with incredulity. "In my suffering? You, mere mortals? It is not yours to break. These chains are forged from my own greed, my own cruelty. They are me." A shiver ran down my spine. Could the key to his imprisonment truly lie within himself? I knew the answer wouldn't be found in logic, but in the depths of this tormented soul. Reaching out, I tentatively placed my hand on the king's bony arm. A jolt of icy energy surged through me, a vision flooding my mind. I saw his life unfold, a tapestry woven with avarice, betrayal, and the suffering of countless innocents. I saw the moment of his curse, the vengeful spirit binding him to this eternal agony. And then, amidst the darkness, I saw a flicker of regret, a single tear staining his skeletal cheek. It was a flicker of humanity, a spark of empathy buried beneath layers of evil. With newfound understanding, I spoke, my voice echoing in the cavern. "You cannot escape your punishment," I said, "but you can choose its meaning. Let go of your greed, your hatred. Embrace the suffering you inflicted and find redemption in your torment." The skeletal king stared at me, a flicker of confusion battling the embers of malice in his eyes. The cavern fell silent, the whispers and moans fading into a breathless anticipation. Then, slowly, painfully, the king's skeletal hand reached up and touched his own chest. His jaw, stretched in a silent scream, began to tremble. A low, keening sound filled the air, the sound of a soul facing its own abyss. And as the sound crescendoed, the chains binding the figures around him began to crack and crumble. Light bloomed within the moss-covered growths, chasing away the green glow. The figures, gasping, rose to their feet, their skeletal bodies filling with flesh, their hollow eyes regaining their lost spark. The skeletal king, bathed in the growing light, shrunk, the burning embers in his eyes dimming to embers. His emaciated limbs thickened, flesh reforming over bone, until he stood before us, a man ravaged by regret and remorse. Around him, the cavern transformed. The moss-covered growths withered and died, replaced by vibrant green moss and delicate ferns. The air lost its cloying smell, replaced by the fresh scent of damp earth and life. The cavern itself seemed to sigh, a sense of relief washing over the place as the curse lifted. The freed figures, no longer skeletal forms, but people etched with the scars of their ordeal, gathered around the man who had been their tormentor. Some spat curses, others wept in relief, but most approached him with a hesitant understanding. In their eyes, I saw a reflection of my own journey. We had faced the abyss and found not just escape, but a glimpse into the complex tapestry of human suffering and redemption. The king, once a monster, was now a broken man, his punishment not his imprisonment, but the weight of his own deeds. As the light bathed the cavern, Priya and I turned to leave. We had come seeking thrills, but found something far more profound. The horror of Dead Man's Curve would forever be etched in our memories, but so would the echo of redemption, the reminder that even in the darkest corners of the human soul, a flicker of light can still be found. We emerged from the tunnel, blinking in the sudden sunlight. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, star-studded sky. The world seemed brighter, somehow, the air lighter. We had cheated death, not just our own, but the death of hope within those tortured souls. But as we drove away, the whispers of the tunnel followed us, faint echoes on the wind. They were not the taunts of the damned, but a reminder of the fragility of our own humanity and the constant battle between darkness and light that rages within us all. The story of Dead Man's Curve ends not with a bang, but with a lingering question. Can the wounds of the past be truly healed? Can redemption be found in the abyss? These are questions that will stay with me long after the echoes of the tunnel fade, a stark reminder of the darkness that lurks within each of us and the fragile hope that flickers against it. And so we drive on, carrying the weight of our experience, forever marked by the whispers of Dead Man's Curve.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more similar horror stories.